as in the mustard plant, and sometimes they are left empty behind while the plantlet shoots through them. And now the plant can no longer afford to be idle and live on prepared food. It must work for itself. Until now it has been taking in the same kind of food that you and I do, for we too find many seeds very pleasant to eat and useful to nourish us. But now this store is exhausted. Upon what, then, is the plant to live? It is cleverer than we are in this, for while we cannot live unless we have food which has once been alive, plants can feed upon gases and water and mineral matter only. Think over the substances you can eat or drink, and you will find they are nearly all made of things which have been alive: meat, vegetables, bread, beer, wine, milk, all these are made from living matter. And though you do take in such things as water and salt, and even iron and phosphorus, these would be quite useless if you did not eat and drink prepared food which your body can work into living matter. But the plant, as soon as it has roots and leaves, begins to make living matter out of matter that has never been alive. Through all the little hairs of its roots it sucks in water, and in this water are dissolved more or less of the salts of ammonia, phosphorus, sulphur, iron, lime, magnesia, and even silica or flint. In all kinds of earth there is some iron, and we shall see presently that this is very important to the plant. Suppose, then, that our primrose has begun to drink in water at its roots. How is it to get this water up into the stem and leaves, seeing that the whole plant is made of closed bags or cells? It does it in a very curious way, which you can prove for yourselves. Whenever two fluids, one thicker than the other, such as treacle and water, for example, are only separated by a skin or any porous substance, they will always mix, the thinner one oozing through the skin into the thicker one. If you tie a piece of bladder over a glass tube, fill the tube half full of treacle, and then let the covered end rest in a bottle of water, in a few hours the water will get into the treacle, and the mixture will rise up in the tube till it flows over the top. Now the saps and juices of plants are thicker than water, so directly the water enters the cells at the root, it oozes up into the cells above and mixes with the sap. Then the matter in those cells becomes thinner than in the cells above, so it too oozes up, and in this way, cell by cell, the water is pumped up into the leaves. When it gets there, it finds our old friends the sunbeams hard at work. If you have ever tried to grow a plant in a cellar, you will know that in the dark its leaves remain white and sickly. It is only in the sunlight that a beautiful, delicate green tint is given to them. And you will remember from Lecture 2 that this green tint shows that the leaf has used all the sun waves except those which make you see green. But why should it do this only when it has grown up in the sunshine? The reason is this. When the sunbeam darts into the leaf and sets all its particles quivering, it divides the protoplasm into two kinds, collected into different cells. One of these remains white, but the other kind near the surface is altered by the sunlight and by the help of the iron brought in by the water. This particular kind of protoplasm, which is called chlorophyll, will have nothing to do with the green waves and throws them back, so that every little grain of this protoplasm looks green and gives the leaf its green colour. It is these little green cells that by the help of the sun waves digest the food of the plant and turn the water and gases into useful sap and juices. We saw in Lecture 3 that when we breathe in air we use up the oxygen in it and send back out of our mouths carbonic acid, which is a gas made of oxygen and carbon. Now every living thing, wants carbon to feed upon, but plants cannot take it in by itself because carbon is solid. The black lead in your pencils is pure carbon. And a plant cannot eat, it can only drink in fluids and gases. Here the little green cells help it out of its difficulty. They take in, or absorb out of the air, carbonic acid gas which we have given out of our mouths, and then by the help of the sun waves they tear the carbon and oxygen apart. Most of the oxygen they throw back into the air for us to use, but the carbon they keep. If you will take some fresh laurel leaves and put them into a tumbler of water turned upside down in a saucer of water, and set the tumbler in the sunshine, you will soon see little bright bubbles rising up and clinging to the glass. These are bubbles of oxygen gas, and they tell you that they have been set free by the green cells which have torn from them the carbon of the carbonic acid in the water. But what becomes of the carbon, and what use is made of the water which we have kept waiting all this time in the leaves? Water, you already know, is made of hydrogen and oxygen, but perhaps you will be surprised when I tell you that starch, sugar and oil, which we get from plants, are nothing more than hydrogen and oxygen in different quantities joined to carbon. It is very difficult at first to picture such a black thing as carbon making part of delicate leaves and beautiful flowers, and still more of pure white sugar. But we can make an experiment by which we can draw the hydrogen and oxygen out of common loaf sugar, and then you will see the carbon stand out in all its blackness. I have here a plate with a heap of white sugar in it. I pour upon it first some hot water to melt and warm it, and then some strong sulphuric acid. This acid does nothing more than simply draw the hydrogen and oxygen out. See, in a few moments a black mass of carbon begins to rise, all of which has come out of the white sugar you saw just now. The common dilute sulphuric acid of commerce is not strong enough for this experiment, but pure sulphuric acid can be secured from any chemist. Great care must be taken in using it, as it burns everything it touches. You see then that from the whitest substance in plants we can get this black carbon, and in truth 1/2 of the dry part of every plant is composed of it. Now look at my plant again, and tell me if we have not already found a curious history. Fancy that you see the water creeping in at the roots, oozing up from cell to cell till it reaches the leaves, and there meeting the carbon which has just come out of the air, and being worked up with it by the sun waves into starch or sugar or oils. But meanwhile, how is new protoplasm to be formed? For without this active substance none of the work can go on. Here comes into use a lazy gas we spoke of in Lecture 3. There we thought that nitrogen was of no use except to float oxygen in the air, but here we shall find it very useful. So far as we know, plants cannot take up nitrogen out of the air, but they can get it out of the ammonia which the water brings in at their roots. Ammonia, you will remember, is a strong smelling gas made of hydrogen and nitrogen, and which is often almost stifling near a manure heap. When you manure a plant, you help it to get this ammonia, but at any time it gets some from the soil, and also from the raindrops which bring it down in the air. Out of this ammonia the plant takes the nitrogen and works it up with the 3 elements carbon, oxygen and hydrogen to make the substances called albuminoids, which form a large part of the food of the plant, and it is these albuminoids which go to make protoplasm.